Never thought I'd be doing this in mid-April, but here we go. The Vol View starts right now.
In Tennessee.
All right, the Vol View begins right now. So here's how it happened. End of last week, starting quarterback for the Tennessee Vols, Nico Iamaleava, did not show up for practice, did not show up to some of the spring practices because of a contract dispute. He currently made about $2 million per year from Tennessee. He wanted to double and pay up to $4 million. Wake up Saturday morning and I see, Nico is no longer a Vol. Josh Heupel announces it, head coach of the Vols. Josh Heupel announces it, and he said, I believe this was after the spring game, it's the state of college football. At the end of the day, no one is ever bigger than the program. That includes me too. We've got an opportunity. We've got a bunch of guys who are going to give their all for Tennessee. We move forward, got a great group. Let's go compete, end quote. So Josh Heupel very much clearly putting his foot down and saying this, and kudos to him for saying this program's not about me either. Because some coaches, we know how it is in college football where you're in small towns. It's not like, listen, there are exceptions, USC, Miami, Texas, programs that are in big markets in the country where the coach doesn't have, it's not so much of a dictatorship as it is by and large around the country in college football. Tennessee, that's the case. I love me some Knox Vegas. I love me some Knoxville. But that could be the case if Heupel allowed it to be. And he held himself accountable there as a former player, former Heisman Trophy finalist, I believe. So let's play all three sides of this because I think there's a hierarchy for who to put heat on. So let's start at the bottom. Who to put the least amount of heat on. That to me is clearly and obviously, I think most people agree, the Tennessee football program deserves the least amount of flack. You can't have a guy who, and this will sort of bleed into Nico, but you can't have a guy who had a good season, unbelievable high upside player, was a 5-star recruit, number 1 quarterback out of Los Angeles in high school. I believe he was the number 3 quarterback in his class. Arch Manning was number 1. That was a great quarterback class. Nico was number 3 in the nation among high school quarterbacks, goes to Tennessee. If you go back to the Vol View last year, I had high expectations for this kid, and he was good. He was a good player. Redshirt freshman, all of it. He was good. You can't have that guy then come and say, hey, double my pay. So that transitions me to Nico because Tennessee stands on business. It's the program first. It's about the power T first. We're going to stick to our guns. And by the way, even if you had paid Nico, would that not have caused some fissures in the locker room? This is the first situation in the new NIL era, which I will get to later in the segment, where you saw a guy literally hold out for a contract, or at least a notable player hold out for a contract and not get the bag, at least from said program. Somebody will pay Nico. He will be on a roster next year. So Tennessee is 100% in the right and standing on business. Let's transition to Nico now, because this is where I think it gets interesting, because I think he holds the second most amount of, or should get the second most amount of flack, so to speak, the second most amount of criticism among the 3 players in this instance. So Nico is, again, an exceptionally talented young man. He's about 6'6", got a big-time arm, mobile, brings all the necessary tools to the table that you can develop into being a high-profile, high-standard quarterback. Where Nico messed up, and I think this is not quite as indicative on Nico as it is the people around Nico. I hope he doesn't mind this. Not Nico, but the person I'm about to mention. I hope he doesn't mind this. Matter of fact, I won't even mention his name, just to be professional. He can He can say that later. I have a source very close to me that told me before Nico took his first snaps as the Tennessee starting quarterback. I think this might have been after the Cheez-It Bowl a couple of seasons ago when Joe Milton declared for the draft. Joe Milton, now a Dallas Cowboy, and Nico got to start that bowl game against Iowa, played really well. Tennessee blowed Iowa, the whole bit. Might have been around that time. It might have been toward the start of last season. Said source told me that they knew of the people around Nico, and most notably his dad, his family, the people around him, and said, this kid has the wrong voices in his head. This kid does not have the requisite, agents or business people around him to put him in position to be successful as it pertains to off-field endeavors, which could then bleed into on-field endeavors like it did in this instance. And so I put more heat on the adults in this situation surrounding Nico. Now, not that Nico doesn't deserve blame. Nico was the one who skipped spring camp. Nico was the one who asked for a bonus in pay after we can show you the numbers let's take out the games against the crappy teams, against the guaranteed W's for Tennessee. Let's take out that out-of-conference game against NC State. NC State was not a good team in the ACC last year. Let's show Nico Iamaleava's stats against the SEC. Put him up there. Not much to write home about. 8 games against the SEC, 9 touchdowns, 3 picks, threw for essentially exactly 200 pass yards per game, and he completed 63% of his throws. With excellent wideouts, a great O-line, a great running game, and a brilliant offensive head coach in Josh Heupel. Now, I think Nico's going to improve. My expectation for Tennessee in 2025 was going to be, I don't want to say like championship as a national championship, but could we compete to finally get to Atlanta, to finally get to the SEC title game, which we haven't done in nearly 2 decades? Sure. With 10-2 last year, Nico again put up those stats, but we had a great running game, great defense. Heupel had all the pieces. So it's completely reasonable to think Nico, as a young kid, could improve a year from now. That's the whole point of college football, is to develop into being an NFL prospect. And so I think that would have improved. But it is absurd for Nico and his representation, the people around him, to go to Tennessee and say, hey, after, let's keep it real, a mediocre at best season, particularly against the top competition, that we want to raise. That's bad business, that's bad negotiating, and it shows the people around Nico do not know what they're doing whatsoever. That, to me, is where the biggest slice of the get on Nico pie goes. To me, Nico individually, his mistake was listening to these people, which fractured his relationships in the locker room, which now puts Tennessee in a spot where the quarterback options they have right now, they got this kid, I think Merklinger is his name. He's a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman. We'll see what he does. I'm not totally convinced he'll be Tennessee's starter. I would be shocked if the Vols don't go hunting in the transfer portal this spring. So that's the Nico side of it. Tennessee deserves almost no blame. Nico and his representation deserve a lot of blame. Not as much as the NCAA. And I have been going at these folks, at this sham of an organization, since Carving It Up began in 2019. This is the same NCAA that for years refused to accept the crazy idea that maybe college athletes who make millions upon millions of dollars for the respective programs can't get a slice of that pie. Because it's amateur athletics. It's about the education. Guys, yes, in most instances. But Zion Williamson did not go to Duke to get a college education. Okay? Caleb Williams did not go to Oklahoma and then transfer to USC to get a college education. It helps. It can maybe aid you off the field. But once you make the pros, once you make the NBA and NFL and have any level of success, mission accomplished. That's the goal of college football. And let's be honest. I go to a few Tennessee games a year. I'm sure we all go to college football games any chance we get. We are not showing up to see the guys play because they're excellent students. The ones that are, God bless them. The biggest shouts out in the world to them. But the superstar, that is not their main goal. It's like, it's not. And the NCAA, for some, this misplaced sense of self-righteousness, found themselves unable to accept that very basic fact. It literally took until A 6-3 majority conservative Supreme Court said, hey, guys, your business model is illegal. Stop. They finally accepted NIL. But they accepted NIL, and as a result, or in some part, the transfer portal, and said, y'all figure it out. You know, the athletes, the people around the athletes, the programs, y'all figure it out. Not like we're the ones in charge or anything. We'll let everybody below us figure out. We'll micromanage, and that's being kind. We'll let you guys figure it out. As opposed to, I don't know, setting guardrails, enforcing policies, making it so that it's not an absolute discombobulated mess. To where Carson Beck gets $4 million. Nico sees that and says, better than Carson Beck. For the record, I think he is better than Carson Beck. I don't think Beck's very good at all. And he says, why can't I get that? College football needs two major policies. One with NIL and another with the transfer portal. And I think they're pretty darn simple. There has to be a salary cap. Point blank. So listen, I have been in the past with the only major sport, major professional American league that does not have a salary cap, Major League Baseball. I have been very pro no salary cap with that sport because my mindset is that there's the Dodgers, there's the Yankees, there's the Mets, there's the Red Sox, there's the Cubs, there are St. Louis Cardinals. There are certain organizations that just generate more revenue than the Tampa Bay Rays or the Arizona Diamondbacks. But there are also some franchises, some organizations like the Pittsburgh Pirates, like the Seattle Mariners, like others who just won't pay, who do not have it as a top priority to get the very best talent on their roster as soon as possible to put your team in position to compete for a World Series. There's some owners that just will not spend. So my mindset is, okay, then what's the point of having a salary cap if you won't spend anyway? College football is different because you have the disparity between an Ohio State, a USC, a Texas, the premier. USC is obviously not on the level of the other two right now, but I'm talking in terms of revenue generated. They're in a class of their own as opposed to Vanderbilt, Rutgers. They're just not in the SMU. Like they're just not in the same. We're not playing by the same rules here as it pertains to salary cap, or as it pertains to revenue generated. Institute a salary cap. As it relates to the transfer portal, I think it's pretty simple. Just like the NFL has a period of free agency, just like the NBA, Major League Baseball, periods of free agency. Have a transfer period. You can have it post-spring. So if the guy, again, Joe Burrow is a prime example. Joe Burrow was not able to be, I think it was JT Barrett, and I forget, it might have been the late Dwayne Haskins, God rest his soul, but I don't think he was able to beat either of those two guys. So Joe Burrow transferred post-spring at Ohio State to LSU, and Joe Burrow 2 years later became a college football legend. So post-spring practices all the way up to a month before the regular season. So let's put this from like April 28th, sometime late April, to July 28th. So like a 3-month period for the transfer portal. And then the other period can be post bowl games. Once all the minor bowl games have been played, or even the big ones, Rose Bowl, the New Year's Six Bowls, as they used to be called, once those have been played, institute that portal process, that portal period from then until the start of spring practices. That's it, because it can't just be a Wild West. You can just Tom Izzo talked about this during March Madness. Like there were guys who were transferring in the middle of the tournament once their teams got eliminated. That can't happen. That's it, again, Wild West. It is the NCAA being the discombobulated mess. And again, I have just want to make this abundantly clear and clarify myself. I have been as pro NIL as any pundit that you will see in anywhere, because I think, again, as the Supreme Court, I think, stated the obvious 4 years ago. You can't just make millions of dollars for a corporation, for a business, and get nothing. You can't do that. If you're one of the major players to that business making set amount of money, you can't do that. It's illegal. And so, but there does have to be guardrails. There does have to be policies put in place in order to ensure that there is some level of stability and organization. Two things the NCAA seem to be allergic to forever, which is why in the long run, I think college football just needs a commissioner in general, as opposed to the NCAA running everything. But to circle this all back home, Tennessee stood on business, stood on their program, understood that if we were to cave to this guy, and by the way, if Nico was Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, number one picks of years past, heck, Kyler Murray even, like a dude who's like, okay, this guy could be the first pick in the draft. This is a transcendent talent, one of the best we've seen in our school's history. And by the way, Tennessee once had Peyton Manning, so they've seen great. By the way, Peyton Manning, if Peyton Manning played in the modern day, if it were a situation like that, pay him. You pay those guys. You pay those superstars. Okay, Colorado, you pay Shedeur Sanders. You pay Travis Hunter. Okay, whatever they need, you pay them. Which is, again, part why I think we need a salary cap so that there is a number to go off of relative to the salary cap. And by the way, you can raise it like the NFL does. But I just think we are in a spot with college football and with college sports in general where I can be pro NIL and pro transfer portal, but there does have to be guardrails into this. And as for Nico, this kid has got to get better, got to get smarter people around him business-wise. Because we talk about, oh, Nico might have cost himself money elsewhere. Some program may not pay him what he's wanting to get. Whatever. That to me is not what I'm worried about so much as it's going to hurt him on the field. The Tennessee Volunteers are, Wes Rucker, shout out to Wes Rucker, who covers the Vols for a living, does a great job. Love to get him on the show at some point. But he put out a great tweet. If I could pull this up on my phone here, because I thought it summed up the situation beautifully. Because he was talking about how Nico really hurt himself business-wise. Here it is. This Nico Iamaleava kid is really talented, and he's looking for a guaranteed QB1 job and a system built for him, as well as a few $1 million on a college football playoff supporting cast in his draft year. Tennessee's got to be at the top of his list, right? The heck's his family thinking? So, and again, not to take the heat off Nico, but it is a situation where he's got bad advice around him, and a source that I know very well told me that was the case about 1.5 years ago, and it's materialized. So that's where we're at. Tennessee, for as far as the Tennessee Vols 2025 season, barring they land a transfer quarterback in during this spring process, they're not in as good a shape as they were 7 days ago as it relates to competing for a college football playoff spot and certainly competing to be in the SEC title game in Atlanta. And that's where we're at. It's because Nico had bad business people surrounding him, and because the NCAA, per their history, refuses to work and put in a system in place that actually makes a tiny bit of sense. That is it for this week's edition of The Vol View. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.